You're listening to the Morphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Morphology Podcast, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week we will get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? This week, you get to meet author and cyclist Pattie Baker, who has written many books and blogs, including the book Traveling at the Speed of Bike. She also has a great blog by the same name. Well, a few months ago, after getting hit by a vehicle while riding her bike, she created the You Go Girl series, where each day in August, she blogged about an inspiring woman who makes it welcoming to ride bikes. I really enjoyed talking with Pattie and hope you do as well. Enjoy! Well, on the podcast this week, we have Pattie Baker. Hey, Pattie, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm great, Kathy. How are you?
Good. Well, we are recording this in the midst of, I guess 2020 hasn't been the best year, but kind of trying to figure out election results for the President of the United States and pandemic still going on. So hopefully when listeners, if they listen to this years from now, they won't feel the stress in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, how have you been doing with all of this? It's been a little bit of a crazy time.
Yeah, definitely crazy. I've been trying really hard to avoid media, social media, TV, even conversations with friends because it's just such a tense time. You don't want to say the wrong thing and, turn a friendship into a battle of politics.
Yeah, I know. I mean, on the other hand, there's so much to learn from each other. So I'm actually really grateful for some of those conversations.
Sure.
Even when we fall into them a little unexpectedly.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, definitely.
It's been a really eye-opening year on so many fronts.
That's
so
for
I'm
sure.
Grateful to be here to talk with you.
Good. Yeah. Obviously this is a podcast about cycling, so I have all kinds of great questions. And we were talking before we pushed record, and we have quite a few things in common, which I think we're going to talk about today, like being an LCI, which is a league certified instructor for cycling. And we also have both been hit by cars while we're on our bikes. So I'm sure we'll get into all of that. But why don't you start out by telling the listeners where you live and what cycling is like there, like what the culture's like?
Okay, well, I am in Metro Atlanta. I've lived here for about 30 years. And I came down to work with Turner Broadcasting. I came down from New York 30 years ago. And just, really fell in love with it for lots of different reasons, but especially in the last, I'd say last 7 years or so, 8 years, since there's been a real concerted effort in Atlanta first, but then with a ripple effect throughout the Metro Atlanta region to provide better opportunities for bike riding and more access for all. So that's been really, really wonderful to see. It was, surprising to me how difficult it was to ride a bike when I first came down here. So as a matter of fact, we had moved down when my husband and I, when we just got married, and he gave me a bike for our wedding. After about a year of riding it here, I put it up in my attic because it was just so incredibly dangerous and difficult. And it was up there for over 20 years.
Wow.
I took that bike down, whatever it was, maybe 7 years ago or so now, that has been pretty life-changing.
Yeah.
So,
I have interviewed a couple of women for this podcast who are from, or at least live in Atlanta. And man, they got me putting Atlanta, Georgia on my bucket list of places to come ride.
Yeah, it's really terrific. I love it. It's beautiful. The weather is, I ride year round. It's hilly. It gets hot in the summer. It has the largest percentage of tree canopy of any urban center, which is wonderful. And there's a lot of free fruit trees. The public art is probably my favorite aspect of riding my bike in Atlanta. So I love it. I love taking people out riding bikes here. They're always surprised because especially if you only have the image of Atlanta as, from conventions or the Olympics or something like that. And just really, really interesting, diverse folks here doing a lot of exciting things.
It's a pretty major city, but you can bike the whole perimeter, can't you, on bike trails?
Perimeter, by that, are you thinking of the Atlanta Beltline, or are you
Yeah.
thinking of, yeah, well, the Atlanta Beltline is a 22-mile loop that
Oh.
runs 2 miles from the center of downtown.
Oh,
And
nice.
it
Okay.
goes through about 45 neighborhoods. It connects 45 different neighborhoods. So yeah, that's not complete yet, but it's well on its way.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's like I said, the ripple effect of that is that, every other municipality that butts up against Atlanta and throughout other parts of Atlanta, is working to try to connect to that 22-mile loop. So
Nice.
it's been this huge impetus for accelerated, infrastructure development. So, yeah, the perimeter, when you say the perimeter here, we actually have a highway called the Perimeter Highway.
Oh, okay.
I think there's 78 miles on that. And that is a kind of a big circle around Atlanta. I think 1 mile has
Bike.
has actually a quite wonderful bike path right next to it. But it's 1 mile. It's a start,
Yeah.
and I'm hanging my hopes on it.
Yeah. Well, I think now is a good time to bring up, since we started talking to each other, you have become the first Metro Atlanta bike mayor. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's with an organization that just happened a couple of weeks ago. And it's an organization, a social enterprise in Amsterdam named Bikes, BYCS, that has spearheaded over the last number of years a bicycle mayor network around the world. And I think I'm the 105th bicycle mayor and the 5th in the United States. I am representing the Metro Atlanta 10-county region. I'm going to try hard to shine a light on that diversity of experience and, hopefully really help folks to see what's possible by sharing what's happening in the other counties and other cities. I mean, we're in a lot of ways pretty siloed. And I want to build some bridges between that.
That's awesome. And just little things. I'm thinking of my community specifically where a new bike trail will pop up and, everyone's excited. And then I ride it and it just ends like at the weirdest place. You're in the middle of traffic and you're like, what the heck? And that would be the perfect opportunity if there was a bike mayor that I could communicate with that person and say, what the heck happened here? And, in that specific situation, I was able to, after, countless emails, to find out there really is a plan. Once the actual street is going to be repaved, then the trail will continue. And so then to be able to speak out and say, stop looking at the negative side of it. This is the start of something bigger.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I think a lot of times, and keep in mind, a lot of cities are hiring well-paid engineers who work to actually oversee the building of the infrastructure. That's not the role of the bike mayors in this network. But if you're lucky enough to have that person on staff, in your city or county, it's definitely. And they definitely need the feedback. I mean, because we have public works folks who are continuing to put in bike lanes that don't meet what's called NACTO guidelines, which is the National Association of City Traffic Officials, or I think that's what the acronym stands for. And these there are specific guidelines for speed and volume of motor vehicle traffic that, I think there are a lot of cities that are excited to apply for bicycle-friendly community designation from the League of American Bicyclists. And so they're throwing paint on the street that does not provide safe access for all or appropriate protection for the speed and volume of motor vehicle traffic, and claiming that to be a success story. And that's something that really needs to be called out. And the problem being, of course, it's not like they go back and revisit it and then make it accessible. They consider it done, completed, and a success story, and then they move on. So that's concerning to me. It's like, the second, as you just, the example you just gave, Kathy, is a perfect example that when you ride it, you see what the problems are.
Right.
These are not hard to hard to understand problems. It's
Right.
just very few people are actually riding and especially people, perhaps who are making decisions are not actually road testing it. So,
and sometimes it comes down to, they had the funding to get it done at that time, and in 10 years it will all be beautiful and match up. But for now, it's kind of one of those catch-22s, like, well, if they have the money and the funding and the people to do it, let's get it done, versus, let's put the money somewhere else and this trail will never exist. So it's kind of a weird situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it because, I mean, you do hear a lot of those excuses, and, those kinds of compromises can put lives on the line,
Right,
and they also are exclusionary to, they're centering just one type of person who rides a bicycle. That's not helping us to realize our potential,
right,
as a alternative means of transportation, not just recreation.
Right. So speaking of, just using the bicycle as transportation or recreation, I'm not sure if you were recreating or transporting yourself when you were hit by a car, but you survived because we're here today talking, which is great.
Right.
But I'm assuming, like when I was hit by a car, it definitely changed the way that I get on my bike and the way that I act and I think. And I'm just wondering if you could kind of give us some highlights of what happened to you and if it changed you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm so sorry that you had that experience also. I mean, the unfortunate part is really most people who ride with any regularity, I would almost say everyone who rides with regularity has had close calls, and many people have been hit. So, I guess, knock on wood, I was lucky to make it so long without being hit. But the day that was in July, I was actually riding my bike home. I was within a mile of my house in a, quote unquote, family friendly suburb city in Metro Atlanta. And I was actually just riding my bike home from local school where I had stopped to film a little video. I had been asked by the statewide bike advocacy group, Georgia Bikes, and one of my city councilors, if I would videotape something for a driver education video they were compiling to give some tips to drivers how not to hit bike riders. So
how ironic.
I know it was literally within 5 minutes. And the kind of haunting part to me was that the very, very last thing that my daughters and my husband would have seen on my phone was this video of me saying, we're all just trying to do the same thing. We're all just trying to get home. So anyway, I was riding home on a residential road, and woman driving a 4,600-pound SUV hit me. She honked and then hit me immediately. She hit my bike, she hit me, and she kept going. She was a hit and run.
Wow.
Luckily, I had my body camera on, and it was running. I called paramedics. I had witnesses came. And you said about being an LCI, we do so much hazard avoidance techniques and training that it's miraculously I did not go down. And that was the part that saved my life. So I did have witnesses and paramedics and the police, and she was cited for 3 different offenses. And the interesting one, well, it was, leaving the scene, the 3 feet to pass violation statewide. We have a statewide law. But 2 months earlier, my city had become the first city in the southeastern United States that adopted a vulnerable road user ordinance. And that provides additional prosecutorial options when the 3 feet to pass state law is violated, plus other things. So we did have that on my body camera, and the police officer was able to identify her and cite her with those. So I'm kind of still in the middle of that. But even though I ended up after about 6 weeks, I had physical therapy and this and that. I had some minor injuries. I feel a very big responsibility to make sure that as a precedent case that we're not allowing people to hit human beings with 3-ton vehicles and continue going and not have a consequence. So, I do feel a responsibility. As a matter of fact, just a couple weeks ago, a 12-year-old girl in my city was hit by somebody driving a motor vehicle while she was on bicycle. From what I understand, she ended up not reporting it. And she got knocked off her bike, but she was okay. I'm concerned, like everybody is everywhere, about making sure that we're sending the right message about how easy it is for people's lives to be discounted, when we're riding our bikes. So how about with you when you were hit, and what ended up happening afterwards?
Yeah, it was definitely life-changing for me. And as I was, I got hit in an intersection, and the first thing the driver said to me when I was laying on the pavement was that he didn't see me because he was on his phone. And that was just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to reply to that. Like, this driver did stop, and he was extremely remorseful. I mean, he didn't hit me on purpose, but he was definitely should be driving instead of, checking out his phone. And I had a little bit of recovery. I didn't have any broken bones, thank goodness. But getting back on my bike that first time was really, really hard. And I still am not as comfortable as I used to be on roads sharing with cars.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's definitely, I got right back on, and I've been riding pretty much every day since then. But I have made some route changes. I feel the same way. I mean, I feel definitely a little jumpy. And I mean, folks may not know, but from what I understand, studies show that, women are passed up to 4 times more often illegally than men. There was a study out of Minneapolis that supported that. And also, we tend to be harassed more often in public space. One of the reasons being that women tend to ride bikes more slowly. So when we are sharing space, that can tend to inconvenience people in a different way. So, yeah, so I pick and choose. I really love riding in the city of Atlanta. It's much more preferable to me than riding out in the suburbs. But, I don't know. I am continuing to be hopeful, and I'm trying to center joy as much as I can. And that was the thing. That was the thing that was easy to lose right afterwards, to feel like, oh my gosh, why am I even doing this?
Right.
But the joy of riding is so great. And the benefits that we get from it, the health benefits, mental and physical, the connections with community, the access, the places it takes us, the people we meet, there's just, it is so great and so important, especially in a year like this. I mean, are you finding that you're really relying on bike riding in a way that's been kind of critical this year?
Yeah, and I have a whole new understanding of riding my bike solo, and I have really grown to love it, to be able to it's just me and the farm fields and the cows and, whatever I am passing by. So, yeah, I definitely enjoy the bike rides a little bit differently than before COVID entered our world.
Right. Yeah, see, I mean, we obviously live somewhere very different because I don't have those fields and cows. But for me, it's actually connecting me with people more as opposed to being alone more, because it's a way that I can wave and say hello and chat with people, naturally socially distanced. I'm mostly riding by myself, but I feel like I'm connected to community, in a way. And I'm so grateful, to be able to ride the bike to do that. But, the big thing that I did after the bike riding that saved me was, I did this series called the You Go Girl series
on
my blog. Yeah, well, I was, maybe you felt this way too after you were hit. Like I was kind of turning inward a little bit, feeling I was carrying this little burden of feeling violated and, unsure about what I wanted to do really moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided I'm a writer and I've been blogging for a really long time. So I decided that I wanted to kind of reach out and shine a light on some other folks.
Mm-hmm.
And I focused on women across the United States who were making the USA more welcoming for bike riding. That was it. That was my criteria. Like, who's making it more welcoming? Who's out there just whatever they're doing, the wide variety of things that people are doing. And I decided to focus on women because I just really wanted to, feel connected to that kind of power.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of found myself, talking to some really amazing and interesting people. I mean, everyone from a neighbor, to the new CEO of People for Bikes, to the head of education for League of American Bicyclists, to another bike mayor in New York City, to folks who are running bike-related companies and other people who are, advocates for various things around the country. Just really, really wide group of women, doing some really great things. And I really loved that. I really loved being able to focus on positive stories, like that.
And there are some great stories in there. I think you did one a day, right, for a whole month?
Yeah, I did one a day for the entire month of August.
Mm-hmm.
So, although, to be fair, to be honest, there was about 10 days in the middle where I highlighted 10 different books about bikes that I had read. I read every single one of them.
Yeah.
But it did give me a little interview break, so I could catch up on some of the stories. But yeah, I mean, to be able to talk to people, I mean, like talking with you as well, to be able to talk with people and just hear their stories. And
so this You Go Girl series, you did it, 31 days, 31 women and
right.
authors as well. Any plans to continue that?
Yeah, well, I think the outcome for that for me was kind of a reminder that I love shining the light on other folks. And I like hearing people's stories and having a bigger picture of what's actually possible.
Yeah.
As a result of that, especially, doing the People for Bikes interview with Jen Dice, they asked me to be a ambassador, a People for Bikes ambassador. And what was fun about that, and I should tell you, my motto is trust the journey.
Nice.
So this whole thing has been a journey. And I know that. And it's like, okay, well, we'll just this feels like the next right thing, and kind of just keep doing the next right thing. And so as a result of becoming an ambassador, I was I'm creating these routes that I post on their app, which is called Ride Spot. And that all of the routes I'm trying to target someone who is maybe new to bike riding or newly back to bike riding, or, is really kind of a 2 to 6 mile, not too hilly bike rider. There's not a lot of resources for that kind of person. There's not a lot of rides or routes or, opportunities to be part of really the bike community, so to speak. So I've decided to make that my target. And so the routes have been a lot of fun, and they've been all over Metro Atlanta. And, they often have art involved because that's, very much my passion. So as a result of doing these, one of the women I ended up meeting is a woman who was the person behind a neighboring city's kind of model mile on one of these new paths that are being built that will eventually connect to the Atlanta Beltline that we were talking about earlier. And we ended up meeting at the Georgia Bike Summit, which was online this year. And completely coincidentally and unexpectedly, she was connected to some families out in Clarkston, Georgia, which I had done a separate tour at. And that's the largest refugee population, the most diverse square mile in the United States.
Oh, okay.
It's a large refugee resettlement area. And she ended up connecting me with some girls there who needed to learn some bike skills so that they could get to school. And so I've been teaching out there every week and really, really enjoying that. And again, the trust the journey sort of irony in all of this is that I was supposed to leave for the Peace Corps back in June.
Oh.
And that was delayed because of COVID. And I was supposed to go to Uganda. And the people that I'm working with had been in a refugee camp in Uganda from a neighboring country, and then had come here, and we all ended up crossing paths, and I was able to connect with them, honestly, as a result of that bike crash.
Wow.
so it's kind of, you have to kind of lean into just trusting the journey, and that everything's sort of leading you in a way where you're supposed to be.
Right. And is the trip, did you say it was delayed or is it canceled?
I'm delayed till at least next fall.
Okay. Wow. That's like everything was aligned for you to be able to meet all of those people.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if anything is ever really aligned, but it's all out there in our paths. It's just kind of what we're choosing to recognize as sort of the next right thing, and how well maybe we know ourselves and what feels right.
A quick interruption to tell you this week's sponsor is Thirsty Pigs, a full-service mobile event company offering beer, wine, spirits, plus catering for any indoor or outdoor event. Check out more at thirstypigs.com. Now back to the show. So to back up a couple steps, what made you decide to get into teaching cycling?
That story's in my book.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Actually had applied for a job in a nearby city they were looking for people to teach seniors on tricycles, as well as an earn a bike class for some kids and some bike rodeos for kids. And they were looking to hire 2 people, and they were going to put those 2 people through the league training program.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I was actually already working on my book. My book is named Traveling at the Speed of Bike. I was already blogging under that name and everything. And it just felt like the next right thing. I said, this looks interesting. This looks like something I think I could be helpful in. And the training, there was just a lot of stuff I didn't know, and I thought it was great. I thought it was challenging, and that final test when you're leading the other people and you're they throw you out in the middle of the worst possible scenario. I still get a little shaky when I go by that intersection. It was in a really, really busy part of Atlanta. At like sunset on like a Saturday night, which was a really busy time. It was a very, going out heavy sort of place. And it was really nerve wracking, but it was a really great experience. I love doing it. I really recommend it. And you know what? I've spoken to a number of the You Go Girl women are LCIs as well. And they all have such different stories. And really interesting. Some are very funny, and how they came about, doing this, and why, and what their experience was like.
You were laughing about your final test, in crazy Atlanta. Well, mine was in downtown Chicago.
Oh,
and
man.
Same scenario. It was like, sunset and busy and raining. And it was super cold. And so it was the same sort of deal where you're like, oh my God, did I just live through that?
I know.
And my students as well. But I really enjoyed the experience. A quick interruption to tell you this week's podcast is sponsored by Lizard Lips Lip Balm. These great lip balms contain natural ingredients, come in a variety of flavors, and you can choose certified organic or balms with sun protection. Check it out at lizardlips.net. Now back to the show. Well, I'm interested, not only are you a cyclist and an author and a teacher, and I think you mentioned you're into art as well, but you have written several books, and I'm interested to know more about the book called Traveling at the Speed of Bike.
Yeah, that is the book. I also have the blog is the same name. And it is, my tagline for it is, it's a memoir, it's a movement. And because, it is my story, but it's really more the story of a woman at a crossroads in a country at a crossroads. And I think there's a lot of information in there that is pertinent to a lot of people, right now. When you're riding your bike, it's like we are face to face with humanity. And, we are bearing witness, on a daily basis to these sort of monumental changes that are happening in society. I mean, even as much of, when we talk so much about bike riding and, having places to ride and whatever, I mean, it's a bigger issue about who is allowed to be in public space, who, where, when, how long, who defines those rules. I mean, these are not just bike issues. And the bike allows us to access these larger issues and kind of have a firsthand experience with them. So, so I kick off with sort of a, bike's kind of place in my life over the years, and sort of tickling memory alive a little bit in that first chapter. And a lot of people who've read the book find that just drops them down their own incredible rabbit hole of memory. That just some little detail just sort of just like opens up the door for them, which is the intention of that chapter. And then from there, we kind of move forward of sort of the challenges that I face and how I attempt to overcome them, and lots of fun or funny and interesting things that happen, and lots of food for thought, I think, along the way about really unresolved issues here in our country. So the crossroads that we're at in lots of ways. So, and then there's some practical advice at the end of things that really would make a difference, and things that people can do if they want to advocate and get involved locally, nationally, to try to make a difference. So
excellent.
Yeah, and it's a quick read. It's like a maybe 2-hour read. So it's in paperback all over the world, and it's also instantly downloadable to the free Kindle app on any device.
And the website's pretty simple. Same title as the book, travelingatthespeedofbike.com.
Travelingatthespeedofbike.com. And and you'll see, you was talking about You Go Girl series. So with the Bike Mare thing, I'm intending to be shining a light and telling, positive stories as part of the journey. But the other thing was I just ran, I'm a street photographer, and I just ran a series of street photography that features flags leading up. I started on the first day of early voting here in the state of Georgia, and I ended on Election Day. So, and all of those, all of my street photography I take while traveling at the speed of bike. So I think it's fun and provocative. The photos are kind of all over the board. So people may enjoy that, especially as we're waiting for this monumental announcement.
Right. Well, so hopefully people go to your website because it has so much information about you and about the book and just.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for visiting. And I do try. I have a tab that has bonus resources, and there's a whole lot of free stuff there for anyone who's interested in bike riding. There's a lot of stuff there that could be helpful.
Yeah. Well, I think we've talked about the League of American Bicyclists because we're both LCI we're instructors with them. And then, of course, People for Bikes, you're an ambassador with them. Are there any other organizations that you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Georgia Bikes also, and they're really doing some amazing advocacy work, as groups like that in every state probably are doing. So I strongly recommend, people see what their state advocacy group is doing, and then city groups like the Atlanta Bicycle Coalition. And then there's a whole pile of, the ones that I know of are women-owned companies that are giving bike tours, either locally or around the country or world, and like Woman Tours. Jackie Marchand, she was one of the 31 You Go Girl women, as was Robin Elliott, who is the owner of Bicycle Tours of Atlanta. And there's a woman, she wasn't one of the people I interviewed, but I did take her tour out in Santa Monica. There's just a lot of a lot of women-owned businesses involving bikes that could really use people's support, right now especially. And bike shops are considered essential businesses. So definitely do show some love to your local bike shop, however tempting, ordering online might be. If you're thinking of buying a bike, some bike shops, have secondhand bikes or, have, more affordable options. You just really give that some consideration because they're, they are essential and we do need them to be here because if they're not here, we're going to have trouble.
That is for sure.
My bike mechanic skills are not that good yet.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention, people who work in bicycle shops can properly fit you. So even if you're looking at a used bike, go into a bike shop and they can help you figure out, what's going to make you most comfortable, no matter what kind of bike you're getting.
Exactly. And they have become, much more open and experienced and involved with all types of bike riders. And of course, what's happening with cargo bikes and adult tricycles and the e-bikes, all of that is just really opening up. Back to that, the League of American Bicyclists, that website, it is so good, and for anyone who, I guess where you are, you're heading into a very cold winter. I'm taking it. It's a great time to go on those videos and learn some of those skills or just kind of see what are some of these techniques that can actually be really helpful out there. I mean, that's the fun thing that a lot of folks don't realize is that we can reduce or eliminate the incidence of like something like 98% or 99% of the common crash scenarios. We can literally eliminate through awareness and education and skills training, like 99% of them. And so for folks who might be a little, I'm too nervous or too scared to ride bikes, that should be some comfort that you really do have like a lot of control. Now, if someone is impaired or distracted or it's intentional, that's another story. And nothing can really help you against that. But that is not as common as people think. And, you really can create a much safer, environment for yourself out there. You have more control than you think. Let's put it that way. As we're waiting for the cities to sort of, catch up with the infrastructure.
Right. Well, when you look at you specifically, what inspires you to get on your bike again and again?
That's like the last thing I need inspiration for, because it is like, I'm always just trying to find, how can I slip out so I can get on the bike?
Right.
It's so incredible from the second I get on it. The funny thing about the bike is that you do two things at the same time. You solve every problem in the world and you forget every problem in the world.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
At the exact same time, like your brain is doing both of these things. It's just, it's such a habit that I don't, as a matter of fact, if I go like 2 days without riding, I mean, my family gets on my back. They're like, please go. Please get out of here. Yeah. I mean, the biggest trick for me is I try to replace transportation. I use it, especially now during all of this. I try to group my errands and do as many of them via bike as I can. So, and you can knock out, I mean, next thing you know, you're 12 miles in and you've run 3 errands. And I mean, it adds up. I think people will be so surprised how many miles, especially if you typically drive, you'd be surprised how many miles you actually drive just running around your little town, running 3 little errands,
That is so true.
So,
yeah. We know it's still COVID times, but do you have any bike adventures on your horizon?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, these are actually big adventures. As Metro Atlanta Bicycle Mayor, I am focusing on, in the month of November, I'm kind of doing the big Metro Atlanta overview. Then December, I'm focusing on City of Atlanta. And then the next 10 months after that, I'm going alphabetically through the 10 counties.
Oh, nice.
And I have sort of a editorial plan, that involves the municipal plans, focusing on heroes and highlights, telling their stories, shining a light on folks who are already doing the heavy lifting, and sort of the underreported stories, the unsung heroes. And then actually, rubber hits the road, developing ride spot route, and actually, like I said, putting, feet to the fire about, what is the, is the reality matching up with the promise? And then providing resources for people, and maybe building some collaborative bridges, between and among the counties. If I'm seeing things that are replicated or that might benefit from, being connected. So that's, I'm pretty, even though it's not that far from home, it's, there's a lot of places I haven't been, and a lot of wonderful small cities that, are doing some really exciting things.
Well, and I think as the Atlanta Bicycle Mayor, you're going to be inspiring a lot of people without even knowing it, because you're a voice. You're going to start talking to people, and people will see you. And I think that you probably won't even know all the stories, that happen after you leave a community where people are like, I'm going to do more of that, or whatever.
I hope so. I mean, that would be best case scenario, and I do think there's so many people, like you mentioned, those groups. There's so many people doing such incredible heavy lifting. What I think does get lost is joy, and the simple joy of riding a bike. And I'm really, in everything I'm doing, no matter how, not at all discounting the heaviness and how hard so much of what we're trying to do is. But I'm going to try to keep joy front and center, and keep that, because, that's the thing, is that, the joy is what keeps us coming back to this.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And the idea, they say you feel like a kid again, but the problem, of course, is, kids are really just, they're not riding. And if you don't ride your bike when you're a kid, you can't feel like a kid again when you ride your bike for the entire rest of your life.
Right.
I do want to find the positive stories and shine light on that.
Yeah. Well, I know I'll be somebody that's watching from afar to see how you bring joy to people as they get on their bike and go out and feel safe and try new things. I'm pretty excited for you.
Oh, what happens with where you are? Do you put the studs on your tires now, or?
I transitioned to, I have a gravel bike and a fat tire bike. So as long as there's no ice, I still bike all year round.
Oh, that's great.
Definitely don't go as far, even when it's like 25 degrees out. As long as you have the right gear, you can still enjoy a bicycle ride. And, it still brings me a tiny bit of joy when I jump on the trainer in the living room, but not as much as
not the same.
Not as much as being outside. Well, for sure, we need to make sure people go and check out your website, which is pretty simple, travelingatthespeedofbike.com. Well, Pattie, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I really enjoyed getting to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much, Kathy. This was really wonderful. And I love knowing that you're out there, doing all these great things and trying to teach people and reach people and spread the love and joy as well. Yeah. So it makes me just feel much more connected across this country at a time when we really all need that.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
You bet. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks, Pattie, for taking the time to talk about your journey. Be sure to look up her website at travelingatthespeedofbike.com. In addition to her info on her book, you can find her blog, photos, and she has tons of resources to check out. Of course, if you have a topic or name of a cyclist you find interesting, email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com. Please visit my Instagram page for daily entertainment and check out Murphology YouTube page to find videos of some of the places I go on my bike. I'll leave you with a simple quote from the Unwritten Book of Murphology, and this quote comes from today's guest, Pattie Baker. Trust the journey. Think about it.